There are two types of Bitcoiners: people that joined Bitcoin because of number go up, and liars. Everybody came into Bitcoin because of number go up. Some of us stayed for the right reason. This has been the best month ever, and that is a sign what's about to come. Everything against Bitcoin will go to zero, even Microstrategy.
What do you think is the personal self-custody setup of Michael Saylor looking like?
He's a smart cookie. Like, he is one of the very few truly self-made billionaires. He is an MIT-educated rocket scientist and engineer. He has been through the dot-com bubble. He must have a multi-sig, and there's a multi-vendor. In order to pay somebody, we don't need identity. Give me an address, and you gave me that address. That is enough for me, and I will pay that address, and that is proof that, I paid you, and then you can give me the goods or the service. Everything has risk. Like, if you step out on the street, you take a risk. Bitcoin is the most asymmetric risk that you can take.
Hi, Chris. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Doing well. Every Bitcoiner is doing well today, I think.
Yes, it's the first ever episode where we are above 100K. So like people, I don't know, it will be interesting to see where we are in 2 weeks from now when this episode comes out. And we're talking about 100K and it's like at 50K or at 150K. Let's see.
But I feel special that you kept me as a reserve as the special 100K guest. I feel really honored.
Yeah, it's interesting how it goes, because yesterday I dropped the episode with Yellow, the guy who makes since 3 years and 1,100 space till the 100K. And yesterday dropped, and 18 hours later we actually hit the 100K.
Now he's free. He's free, finally.
Finally is free. And today I released with Parker Lewis, and we actually talked about what happens at 100K, what are the psychology implications of 100K, and where he sees when the suddenly phase actually starts and stuff like that. So perfect timing for my podcast, but obviously I didn't knew that. Yeah, really interesting. But what are your first thoughts of 100K? What is that meaning for Bitcoin, and how do you plan to celebrate that?
So I would never have expected this to happen so quickly. Like, I think 1 year ago, like, Bitcoin was at 25 grand or something. Now we did a 4x in like 365 days. And 2 weeks ago or so, like, we recorded an episode for the 21 podcast where we are so certain it's going to happen. And we edged very closely, like I think 99,700 or so was like the limit. And we were all waiting, and I had I have a red wine bottle Knut Svanholm gave me, and I already removed like the plastic film on top, was ready to put to take the cork out. And yeah, it took another 2 weeks or so until we finally tore down that wall. I mean, there was 1,000 Bitcoin or so like at this. It's a special number. I don't care about the price anymore, but a lot of people do. And you see now the legacy media is like all over Bitcoin again, which can't be bad.
What do you think is in general the importance of the Bitcoin price? I know that Bitcoiners always say like, oh, like we don't care about the Bitcoin price, but then every time I put the Bitcoin price in the thumbnail, more people click on it. and a lot of people talk about it, especially now when it goes up. It's all over my Twitter feed also. And obviously normies and no coiners always talk about that. Like, what's the actual importance of the US dollar or fiat price of Bitcoin?
The exchange rate, yeah. So I think there are two types of Bitcoiners. People that joined Bitcoin because of number go up, and fucking liars. Like, everybody came into Bitcoin because of number go up. Some of us stayed for the right reason, the freedom aspect of it, and like the ability to store wealth and to have transactions across the globe that nobody can censor. You don't need any permission. Anybody can join this monetary network. But if we're real, everybody like looked at it and saw the numbers skyrocket and thought, oh, I want to get in on that, and FOMO'd. I still like number go up, but I'm here for other reasons now. And like this price action, like this magic number of 100K is like probably the most difficult barrier for Bitcoin to break through. And afterwards, nobody knows. But happy that we are here.
It's interesting because I feel like the people that are just for number crop technology here are switching to MicroStrategy now. It's like the Bitcoin leverage play.
Yeah, I'm too much 80 IQ to fully understand it. Like to me, it sounds like too good of a deal, and if a deal sounds too good, like stay away from it. I talked to Raikkonen, I talked to like a lot of people that have a deeper understanding of like these financial plays that you can do if you're like a publicly listed company. I wish the best of luck to them. I personally prefer Bitcoin and cold storage because like Coinbase and Fidelity, where Saylor has his coins, they can be captured. It's not their coin. Like there's this huge amount of trust. A thousand things can go wrong. The same can go wrong if you're like in self custody. But yeah, MicroStrategy. Like I don't know, not my cup of tea.
It's like you get a little bit more upside, or this year a lot more upside, but usually a little bit more upside. But you completely lose out on all the freedom aspects of Bitcoin. You don't have control over anything, because it's not only that MicroStrategy might be confiscated or anything happens with MicroStrategy, but you also only hold a IOU of MicroStrategy. It's like a stock
Yes.
portfolio. You don't have custody of MicroStrategy.
They have an IOU to a custodian, you have an IOU to them, and like if something unwinds, I don't know. Like I've talked to people and they say it's like a sure deal, it's safe, and as long as like people believe in this forward-looking equity, like perfectly fine. But like, yeah, I mean, in the Western world, most people do not yet have a use for Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. They're just looking at Bitcoin as a store of value. It's similar. I mean, Michael Saylor is preaching about that, like only crazy crypto anarchists use Bitcoin in self-custody, use it as a medium of exchange to pay stuff with it. But like, I agree with you, you're missing out. And it is a peer-to-peer cash system. And you would want to have those freedoms that Bitcoin provides once it's too late. And like, be prepared is my suggestion.
100%. It almost feels like MicroStrategy is in this cycle the same distraction that altcoins were previously, even though I don't think the same way of MicroStrategy and altcoins, but it's like a distraction of Bitcoin, and here it's now a distraction from Bitcoin self custody. It's maybe a fast stretch for the comparison, but I see it definitely as a distraction, because I see more and more comments of like, I see the same type of comments. Like in the last cycles, I saw more of like, oh, why are you in Bitcoin when you just buy that X altcoin, you get like a free X return, and then you can buy more Bitcoin. I'm just in altcoins because I want more Bitcoin, which is an absurd argument. And the same argument I hear now with MicroStrategy, which is really interesting.
I can go to the park and sell crystal meth and make a lot of Bitcoin. You know, I can make this horrible deal and enrich myself. Sure, go for it. Like, I'm not saying it's like morally apprehensible to invest like in a publicly listed stock or go long on something, like if you believe in it. Like, it's a free market, and I believe very strongly like the free market, if it exists, like will sort this thing out. It is a distraction, I agree, but it also does a lot of good, I think, for Bitcoin, because Michael Saylor is very well spoken. He knows how to talk, he knows how to dance on this kind of dance floor. And when he's on Fox News, when he's on the TradFi media, he has very strong, very convincing arguments, and like the right people would listen to him. Not so much like to a guy like us. Like, we're not talking to like the CEO of Google or something. But so there is an advantage that he's probably the biggest voice in Bitcoin for the last, let's say, 3-4 years. So credit where credit is due. But yeah, I'm not buying that snake oil.
and he himself says buy Bitcoin and not MicroStrategy. He himself says that multiple times in interviews, where he's like, oh, like Bitcoin
He's
is
upfront
really...
about it. Yes. Like he himself like sells MicroStrategy stock to enrich his own personal Bitcoin stack, which I hope he has like on a hardware signing device. Because like everybody says, oh, he owns 4% of the Bitcoin. Yeah, MicroStrategy does, but the chairman, like, he has, I think, like 20,000 Bitcoin, like a measly amount of Bitcoin he owns himself. But you know,
I mean, you're the quiz master, so maybe that's an interesting question. What do you think is the personal self-custody setup of Michael Saylor looking like?
I mean, he's a smart cookie. Like, he is one of the very few truly self-made billionaires. He is an MIT-educated rocket scientist, an engineer, material scientist. He has been through the dot-com bubble. I've seen pictures with him and Rodolfo Novak from CoinKite. So I think like that he listened to him. Maybe like he's also like friendly with Jack Dorsey. Maybe has a BitKey. Like, he must have a multi-sig. Like, I really believe like you do not store like tens of thousands of Bitcoin on a single sig. That would be reckless. And I think like I would believe he's done his research, and there's a multi-vendor multi-sig. Hopefully, that is the best scenario. Maybe he's just like saying here, Fidelity, go take care of that because I'm too busy orange pilling the world. But I don't know.
I mean, with so many Bitcoin, I would just take all the options and have like 50 different solutions or something like that. I don't know, maybe 50 is too much, but definitely multi-vendor, multi-sig with all the options. There's so many out there.
Yeah, I mean, if of course, Michael J. Saylor, you're looking right now, like, talk to me, like, we can set you up with a Wizardzadine Liana time lock decaying multi-sig. So even if you shoot yourself in the foot, like, all you have to do is like wait 15 months, all the money will come back to you. Like, that is the state of the art. That is the thing that you should be doing. And yeah, don't pay a custodian. Like, I mean, point whatever percent you're paying at Fidelity is a lot of Satoshis.
And you would take care of it for half of it.
I wouldn't yeah. I would help him set it up. I'm not a licensed custodian. Like, I would educate him. I would show him how to do it, and then like, be gone, please. Like, I don't want to have the burden to like, I don't think you sleep well if you're taking custody of somebody else's Bitcoin in that kind of amount. Like, I can't insure like 20,000 Bitcoin.
That's a great gateway to the Bitcoin insurance. But first, I want to have one more thing, because you're one of the few guests that have been now on or are now on for a second time. I think I've done it with like 10 or 15 people till now. I think it was 8 months ago, something along those lines, where you've been on the first time. What has been some of the highlights for you? What has been some of the things that you have seen over the last 8 months that maybe shocked you, maybe surprised you? What were some of the things that you have observed in Bitcoin, no matter what, over the last 8 months?
Yeah, so I think in 2024, I attended over 20 conferences. Like, when we time of recording right now, like 2 days from now, I will be in Switzerland for another conference. I've spoken to like thousands of plebs, met a lot of great people. One of my absolute highlights was the very first truly Bitcoin only conference in Hungary. Like, this was per accident. Like, I met Ferry, like the organizer, in Madeira, and he said, "Oh, I have a hotel in Hungary, and I want to do like a Bitcoin conference, and I want to keep it for plebs. Like, you can attend for free, you can pay for like better seating, inclusive food or whatever, but I want to keep it open. Like, I want to be for the community, like a place where people can come and get a proper education." And for 3 days, like, it was absolutely wonderful. There were like 300 people in this beautiful hotel in Miskolc, like in the border to Slovakia. And like, they had phenomenal speakers, like local Hungarian podcasts. I didn't understand a single word, but I recognized all of the slides. Like, I don't speak Hungarian. Surprising number of Hungarians actually speak German. Like, Open Arms was also there, and like, they had like, it was beautifully planned out. Like, there were people that had no idea about Bitcoin going in, and then they learned about where it came from, what its use case actually is, how to buy Bitcoin properly without like all this shitcoin nonsense, how to put it on a hardware signing device. There were workshops. There was like, really, this was like the perfect beginner conference. Like, Bitcoin Miskolc was like my highlight of 2024, I think.
Ferry is great. He also was already on the podcast, and I met him in Prague. He's a great guy, and I think he switched also to Bitcoin payments now. Not switched, but like opened for Bitcoin payments in his hotel, as I saw.
Yeah, I mean, he is a truly orange pill. Like he's a Bitcoiner true and true. And yeah, I mean, I was surprised. Like I talked to Adam from Wasabi Wallet there. Like he's Hungarian, and like he said, this is probably the very first Bitcoin only conference. There have been conferences in Budapest about crypto in general, but in 2024, like I mean, it's about time to have something like this. And he's planning to have another one in his other hotel, I think closer to the Romanian border, like beginning of 2025 or so. And hopefully I will be back there because it was a beautiful like experience and amazing food. Like it was my first time in Hungary.
And Bitcoin only is interesting because it's really developed now where there's so much Bitcoin only content, where there's so much Bitcoin only directions like podcasts, conferences, books, and everything like that. But it was not always like that. Like there was a lot of distractions along the ways. When did it kind of change? I'm just since 4 years in Bitcoin, and it seems like 2021, 2022 was kind of like the first years where the Bitcoin only space really developed. I have no clue how long you are in Bitcoin, but how have you seen that development to a really strong Bitcoin only presence?
I mean, it was much harder early on to find proper like Bitcoin only educators. Everybody was doing everything. Like even the greatest ones, like Andreas Antonopoulos, talked about Mimblewimble and like Ethereum and all these other things. I think you're right. Like around 2020, 2019 or so, like it started out. Like there were some proper toxic maxis much earlier than that, but they didn't have like this large of a following. And now it is easier than ever to fall into the rabbit hole and do not have to touch the stoveplate by getting tempted by like the next big thing to FOMO out of Bitcoin or have like false profits or something. But maybe adding on to this notion from like what was one of my highlights of this year, I have to really break a lance for like the Ethereum classic Dogecoin. What was else? Bitcoin Cash and also Bitcoin conference I attended in Frankfurt, the Proof of Work Summit this year. I was invited by a true Bitcoiner like Michael Parenti, and I met amazing people there. I had amazing conversations. Like Jameson Love was there, Phil Zimmerman, like the Phil Zimmerman attended. I talked to really smart people who do like zero knowledge proof, whatever, cryptography, magic on Dogecoin. And while I do not care the slightest bit about all of these things, it was very nice to have these conversations, not like preaching to the choir. If you go to a Bitcoin only conference, like effectively you're preaching to the choir and you agree with 99% of what those people like tell you or talk about. And there, like, you can go to a, let's call it a shitcoin conference. Like, people watching now, like, I'm sorry, but it is a shitcoin conference. You can test your own ideas and you will come out stronger in your beliefs, I think, if you from time to time seek these kind of conversations with people that are actually believing in these other kind of technologies. And I believe something like Bitcoin Cash is a very great bug bounty for like Bitcoin. Like, oh, they have Opcat activated for like, I don't know how long, millions of transactions and nothing has been rugged. Like we can test opcodes or see if they are exploitable on other side chains instead of having to come up with a bug bounty. Let's do it live. Like let's test it there.
I like the idea of using altcoins as a test net for Bitcoin. I think I first time ever heard that like a half a year ago on a podcast. Someone said it to me, and I was like, "Hey, that's the first real use case I heard for altcoins."
Yeah, I mean, it has been advertised. Like, I mean, the Lightning Network was tested on Litecoin. The like Mimblewimble thing was like on Grim, and like Zcash was initially like announced as something like, oh, we can do all these fancy cryptography things to make Bitcoin more private, and then after a test we can fork all those things in. And like I think Bitcoin is such an enormous amount of wealth or stored wealth now. Like they have to be really careful and slowly and discuss it ad absurdum before we do anything with it. Like I'm not an ossification person. I do want to see certain changes to Bitcoin, and we need to do certain changes because there are some bugs that we are aware of that need to be fixed, but we should do it slowly. And yeah, I mean, who's paying for a bigger bug bounties than, I don't know what the market cap of Bitcoin Cash is, but like it's enough for people to be tempted.
It's definitely enough for that. But yeah, the chart against Bitcoin is a good one since 2017, just straight down. I don't know how many
Everything
percent.
against Bitcoin will go to zero. Everything. I believe even MicroStrategy, but I'm again too dumb to understand the play.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's like if you have like if they not get burned or confiscated or any things like that, and you just have a company that has a Bitcoin balance sheet, and on the Bitcoin balance sheet they can produce cash flow, they should in theory be able to outperform Bitcoin because they have the possibility to accumulate more Bitcoin.
That's what he announced. Like, he wants to build the first Bitcoin bank, and I think that's smart. But like, I would not invest in that. Like, maybe if you give me like a Bitcoin credit, I would get a credit there. But I'm not investing in somebody else to take care of my Bitcoin, because that is the beautiful thing about Bitcoin that I don't want to give up. Everybody can do self custody, and there is no point of not having like no self-custody or something. But then again, I'm also like, I invest in companies as well, in ideas. Like, I'm not selling everything and just going into Bitcoin. I want to build something. And more power to Michael Saylor.
Do you think that everyone will self custody? Obviously, everyone can. There has been a bunch of like, there's so many people that had no clue before of self custody. They were not technical, but now they learned and they got into self custody. I saw a bunch of people, even in my closest family circle. So I know it's true that everyone can get in, but the convenience.
I would actually disagree there. So theoretically, everybody can, but mathematically, like with the UTXO model, it is impossible at this point in time. Like, with the current structure of UTXOs, too many people.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think with Wicked we talked about that, where what was the number? I forgot which number he said. He said like there's like a number of institutions, people, companies that he says like once we reach that and they are transacting on a very regular basis, the last one of that, it just gets outpriced and they should be on a second layer or have some other solution. And then there's like maybe shared UTXOs or something, some solutions around that. But what I meant is just like from a brain perspective, I think everyone can come to self custody. How do you see it with self custody in the future? Do we need to change Bitcoin, the code, to make self custody accessible for everyone, or is it at some point just okay for some people to have self custody on the second layer? How do you see that topic?
Yeah, I mean, can we call it self custody if it's on an abstracted layer? Like, I think self custody is like not with a Lightning service provider, is not with like in Liquid or with a virtual UTXO. Like, I'm not yet convinced that is the way to go. I think it has been like tremendous watching how much easier it has become over the years. And a lot of smart people come up with smart solutions that actually work on Bitcoin right now. Like, I initially mentioned like a Liana wallet. That to me solved the problem of Bitcoin inheritance. Like, I think the idea of having self-custody and being able to give those Bitcoin to your heirs, they were diametrically opposed, because there was always an element of trust. I would have to give them the key now, or I have to give the key to a notary or something like. And as soon as more than one person could have access to this secret, then it's not self-custody. Then it's like the quorum of the people that have access to it, and some parties can rug you. But with Liana wallet, we suddenly have this time component, which is perfectly enforced on chain. And you can have a private key that you can give to your heir. You give the wallet descriptor to them as well, or to a notary. And once you kick the bucket, and after 15 months of inactivity, they have access to the Bitcoin, but not earlier. And if you're still alive, like every year and 3 months, you just do like a self-spend, and this time lock extends into the future. And this is brilliant, and like this solves so much of the problems or the things that I was afraid of. Like,
yeah, it's inheritance planning got way better with that. But back to that one thing where I'm like, do you think that in the future OGs or like people that I think even people that enter now could act as a bank in the future because they're the only ones that be able to have Bitcoin on self-custody, on true self-custody?
maybe in the near future, only BlackRock, MicroStrategy, Robin, you and I, we can transact on main layer, and like, I don't know, a few 100 million original Bitcoin maxis can do so as well, and then we will become like the family trust fund to our dynasty. I don't know what the future will bring in that. Like, I don't want to. Like, I'm a big fan of Lightning and eCash. I think those are great solutions to having more privacy and better payments. But I think the idea of Bitcoin would have failed if we do not solve it like more natively as well. Like, this thing of having peer-to-peer cash should not rely on like trust. Like with eCash, you have this custodian that can theoretically even inflate you. With Lightning, there are limitations, but we can also always make these things better. I'm not the person to do that. I'm looking at the Galaxy brains out there. Yeah, I don't know. So right now, Bitcoin as is perfectly fine to serve the demand that it has, and for the near-term future, that is also true. But I think we are like moving towards a bottleneck, and I don't know what is the solution to that. But the ingenuity of smart engineers, or like a dire situation, like inspires a lot of people to come up with a solution. Like we've been there in history multiple times, and we figured a way out.
And there's a lot of monetary incentive to do so. So I think
Absolutely.
absolutely really cool. And now let's come to the topic that I originally wanted to come with you, Bitcoin insurance. I never heard from anyone else except you around Bitcoin insurances. Are you the only one that actually does that?
So we started out in 2020, and it took a very long time to get a policy, to design the policy and find an insurer to insure Bitcoin and self-custody. Before that, there's BitSure and Avatars, and they are focusing on insuring Bitcoin mining equipment. They're insuring Bitcoin exchanges. There are big custodians like BitGo in the United States. They would also offer insurance on their wallet. That is possible. But this is always, we have the keys, we give you the insurance, you have the access, and then if you want to spend something, there's like some video call or something happening, or there's an HSM that is signing only to a certain whitelist of addresses. But like the idea of having Bitcoin in self-custody and having an insurance on that is utterly new. And we were worldwide the first to have the policy to insure Bitcoin. Like we started with the first policy in October of 2023. And ever since then, like it has been growing, and we are directly embedded in the BitBox, the Swiss hardware signing device. You can click a button and insure Bitcoin up to 100,000 euros. Starting out, this was a lot more Bitcoin. Now we know we're very close to insuring 1 Bitcoin. But it is, yeah, I think the best solution to have something on hand that in a situation where a physical threat occurs, you are insured, because you can insure yourself against cyber hacking, cryptography, and all these things through like the Bitcoin as a property and taking all the proper precautions. But there are instances where you can't protect yourself, and in this gap of coverage, this insurance fits in.
Interesting. It fits also really nicely because BitBox is an official sponsor of the podcast.
We also insure Trezor. But yeah, BitBox was the very first to they did a wonderful job to embed and integrate BitSurance into the BitBox app, so you can not only like buy Bitcoin with Pocket on there, but you can also insure it, and that makes it easier. And yeah, we insure those Bitcoin without touching your private key. Like you can have full custody of that, and we insure you against the $5 wrench attack, for instance.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty. So you pay a monthly fee, and if something happens like and stealing or some type of loss of the Bitcoin, you can get your Bitcoin or the money that you have insured back.
Yeah, so you just mentioned it. You can't get the Bitcoin back. We are so far only paying out in euros. You have to repurchase them like at the spot price. It was a struggle to talk to insurance companies long before there were Bitcoin ETF and to get them to accept Bitcoin as something that they would insure. Because like there are household insurances, you can insure anything, like physical goods, perfectly fine. They have policies to insure gold bars. They have policies for wine. Like if your cellar is flooding and those wine bottles break, they will pay this out without even knowing if those metal bottles actually broke or did you drink them. Or like gold bars, you can steal this acid, you can melt it down. It's perfectly like forever gone. And they would insure that. But as soon as you steer the conversation to, hey, are you interested in insuring this asset called Bitcoin? They would like pull back and think like, is this guy crazy? Like we're not touching Bitcoin with a 10-foot stick. Even though you present them with an asset that has this exact same risk as like a gold bar with the added, like you can trace it back and forth. You can follow the money. You know exactly the amount of Bitcoin that was on the hardware signer during the home invasion. Like you have all these advantages in insuring Bitcoin. And now we have an insurer that reinsures the policy with all the proper like BaFin licenses, and like we're due to expand to more European countries and Switzerland and United States. But yeah, Bitcoin is a hard sell, but thanks to Larry Fink and the boys, it has gotten easier.
That's interesting. Yeah, because when you think about it, Bitcoin should be way easier to insure than gold, as you see, like because gold you can melt down, you can really untraceable, just like get somewhere out of the country. I mean, it's out of the country might be a little bit difficult depending on where you want to bring it, but Bitcoin you can trace it, you can say exactly when it was. And you say the Bitcoin ETF and Larry Fink actually made a difference for that product, like that they are now for Bitcoin and they have the power again for that. It made a difference for that.
Absolutely. Like you're talking to a lot of people in the insurance business, and those voices changed, and like again, money number go up. That also brings a lot of eyes on there. Like people working at insurance companies are also just people, and some of them develop like an interest into Bitcoin. But there were a few insurance companies that had a absolutely no signing anything order regarding Bitcoin, and that has been lifted by some of them. There's still some companies that don't want to deal with this, but yeah, I think like again, Michael Saylor and Larry Fink and all these TradFi bros, like kudos to them. They have played a big part, and yeah, the traditional world like needs to wake up to Bitcoin, and they are slowly doing so.
Yeah, I hear sometimes from Bitcoiners a lot of criticism against Bitcoin ETFs and against Michael Saylor and against traditional finance guys coming into the Bitcoin scene. But Bitcoin is for everyone. Like, even if you don't like someone, it is still
Bitcoin
for him.
is for enemies. Yes, it is accessible to everyone. And again, I think the only artificial intelligence that we have or ever will have is the free market. And if you have an idea and you can execute on it, and if it's a stupid idea, you will fail. If it's a great idea, you will have success if you execute it properly. And like there are options for everybody, and there are reasons to have a Bitcoin ETF. Like if I'm a pension fund, I can't directly custody Bitcoin yet. I will invest in this vehicle. The alternative is not invest in Bitcoin at all. So therefore there is a demand, and therefore like these ETF exist. I personally would never touch it. I'm yeah, able to do it myself. But again, like to scale this nascent technology, and Bitcoin is still nascent because let's face it, like 15, 16 years, like there are three pillars to this. To quote the Mr. Shuchak from Avatars, like there's capital, there's regulation, and then there's insurance. And we have tons of capital now. Regulation is starting to also develop all around it, like love it or hate it, but regulation is a thing that exists and will also exist. And then insurance needs to happen, and that's what we try to do too. Because insurance is one of those pillars. Like I talk to a lot of anarcho-capitalists. Like next week, I'm also at the Hayek Society, Luxembourg Trier Hayek Society, and there's a lot of truly libertarian people. And if you want to get rid of all the states, like the heirs to those nation states will be insurance companies. That I can tell you, because like if there's no public fire department, everybody needs to have like a private insurance with a fire department provider or something. Like in the end, you need insurance, you need regulation, you need capital to grow this, and we are growing this right now.
What kind of brings us to an interesting question where like where is Bitcoin? Do you think Bitcoin is completely changing the financial system, or is it then more of just another tool which people can use?
I mean, in an ideal world, I want to have a Bitcoin standard, but I am like I've had too many turns around this globe to realize, or like to be in the belief that this will happen anytime soon. Like this will take over 2 generations of people. Like people that are growing up now, they do not know a world where Bitcoin has not existed, but it's like far from like replacing all these things. Bitcoin right now is in this monetization stage where we have like a beautiful store of value, and it's becoming more and more also a medium of exchange. Like I have been using Bitcoin for payment for quite some time because I really like not having to use telegraphic transfers like globally. Like when I pay people like outside of the EU, like doing that with like a wire transfer, like actual wire transfers have been lost, which is crazy. Like you would not think like during the internet era that like banks sending money from one bank to another would lose a wire transfer, but that has happened. And with Bitcoin, like this has been solved for me, but more and more people will get to this stage as well. More and more companies already accept Bitcoin. So for the foreseeable future, will be like on the same like 2 tracks, and I think most companies will need to jump onto a train that is not going to stop anytime soon. But the classic financial world will still exist.
And having because I now get paid in Bitcoin of most of my income actually, and it's such an I have one American company, the sponsor of Coin Vigilante, and first we wanted to figure out the fiat payment, and then in the middle of the process I just like, no, like let's switch to Bitcoin, like that's too complicated, and since then it's the first time I tried it with them. Since then all my sponsors are now coming with Bitcoin because it's just way better. I mean, except BitBox, that would be also easy because it's a German bank account, so there it's like no problem. But with an American company or with a Panama company, I think what the Bitcoin way officially has, it's harder because the fiat is like it's really more expensive, harder. I need numbers from a bank that I didn't knew that existed, like some
What's
routing
an
numbers or
ACH
whatever.
number? What the hell is that? Yes. Yeah. And
And
along the way, they also always want to have more information. Like they want to do the full KYC thing. Like, and I'm all for having to ID myself during things like founding a company. I go to a notary. I don't want to, like, if I do a big deal, perfectly fine to show you my ID. But like this has gotten so out of hand. Like all these institutions, they want to do all of the full KYC, like where you're born, your birth date, your favorite salad dressing, like everything. And like they always get hacked, like always. Like you see these big hacks, like in the United States, like hundreds of millions of social security numbers. I'm sorry. Like the scene in South Park. Oh, I'm sorry. And like this is irreparable damage. And this does not have to be this way. And like in order to pay somebody, like we don't need identity. Like give me an address and you gave me that address, that is enough for me, and I will pay that address, and that is proof that I paid you, and then you can give me the goods or the service. And that is the great thing about Bitcoin. Like we found a way to pay people without identity, and now we are jumping through all these hoops to put back identity with LNURL and Bolt 12 and all these things to make it easier again. Like, oh, this is my Bolt 12, zap at zero.io, send me some Bitcoin. But like, you don't need all this shit. Like, if you want to transfer value, and that is the great thing about Bitcoin.
yeah, and once you are going the way of being completely only Bitcoin, I talked with the founder of AirBTC. He has completely adopted Bitcoin, meaning there is no fiat payments. He pays in Bitcoin and he only receives payments in Bitcoin. Then it's like, oh, you don't need that whole fiat thing anymore. You have a website, you have Bitcoin, and there's no need to have some root in a jurisdiction where you have some fiat bank accounts, some KYC. Obviously, you as a person, as an individual person, you are still in a jurisdiction and you have to obey the laws. But that company is completely in cyberspace at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it is based on reputation, whether or not I will pay you, whether or not I will take your service. I do not check, like in Germany, we have like the Handelskammer or like all these fancy things that you have to license for, you have to pay for. And then, like, if I get somebody to build stuff in my house, like, oh, I need tiles to be placed in the bathroom, like, I'm not looking at like certificates of it. I ask other people, like, do you know a guy who does it well? And I will give him my business too. And that is perfectly fine. That is enough. Like we don't actually need all of these things. And that is like this disintermediation with Bitcoin. Like you said, like you can pull up a website and you can get paid. And this can be a 12-year-old child with a great idea. Like I want to be a web designer or I want to cut videos. Like nowadays, like a lot of YouTubers, they have video editors that are not 16 years old. And like in Germany, you have to be 16 to get a bank account. And this way I can already do work. Like they might need like, their parents need to be okay with that, but like they have a way to receive funding from a guy in Japan. And that is just like makes the society better if people can execute on their ideas and do not have these arbitrary rules that are like archaic. Like these are old. Let's get rid of these.
It's interesting. I just thought when you talked about these institutions, because I read today, I was just curious what the mainstream media today says about Bitcoin in Austria hitting the 100K, and I was reading that article quickly. It was not that long, anyways. Basically, my two takeaways from that article. Donald Trump personally pushed Bitcoin to 100K. He was responsible for that
Donald
because
Trump.
it went up 40% since he's got elected. So it has to be Trump, right? And the second thing is like consumer protection in Austria says Bitcoin is risky.
Yeah, I mean, first off, everything has risk. Like if you step out on the street, you take a risk. Bitcoin is the most asymmetric risk that you can take. Like you have no idea. Like to quote Eric Kaysen, like I do not know what kind of money I would leave my heirs if it is dependent on like some guy unelected in the central bank, like setting like some arbitrary number because he thinks he knows best. Like 50 years from now, I don't know what the inflation rate has been during that time. I can tell you for sure my purchasing power in euro or any fiat will be less. With Bitcoin, we know. Theoretically, we could change it. If like all people agreed, we could change the absolute like limits of 21 million. We could do that. But like that is the one thing I will guarantee you will never have like a rough consensus or any consensus of doing, because we know like there will only be this amount of Bitcoin in the future. And I see like this is the emission schedule. Like nobody is like inflating Bitcoin to a surprising number. Like I know when I stack, what is it, 10 million Satoshi, that is the block reward in 20 years. And at that time, everybody and their mom will fight for hash rate to find that block. And I can buy whatever, what is it right now? 10 million Satoshi is 10,000 euros. I can buy that now. Like the equivalent of, what is it currently? Like $400,000 per block reward. That is something that helps me plan, and then I can focus on being a good engineer or being a good insurance provider, or that what I actually want to be good at, and not having to be like a stupid investor at the side. Like, so it's not risky. It's the least amount of risk that you can take, especially if you're young.
The ignorance of mainstream media sometimes hurts my soul, but in the same time, I'm like, yeah, nobody listens to them anyways.
Oh, you would be surprised. There's a lot of people that still, like, I mean, not everything that is written there is wrong or idiotic, but like what is it called? This Gell-Mann paradox, where you read something in a newspaper that is your specialty, and then you realize, oh, this is bullshit, and then you turn the page and read something that is not your specialty, and then you believe everything that is written there. And once you come to the realization, like maybe like there's also some bullshit in there, like you can have different sources, like and you just build your own picture of like the situation from like different sources. And I think if you're a Bitcoiner, you're generally more well informed. But I've also met Bitcoiners with some crazy opinions. So we do not have we're not perfectly without fault, but yeah.
This one thing we got. I think my podcast is kind of the collection of over 350 Bitcoiners now in 1 year, and there are some crazy opinions in there, I have to say.
You can tell me what is my crazy opinion that you talk about behind my back after we're done recording.
I plan to do before Christmas, like a few days before Christmas, an year-end review with like the top 10 clips that YouTube provides me, because YouTube gives me what are the top 10 episodes, and from that I can see what people watch the most and stuff like that. So that will be fun, and maybe I put in some I don't know, my personal 5 funniest moments in the podcast, where like all the craziest opinions around that will be hard to figure out because it's just such a huge library in 1 year. But
that is really, really impressive. What you have done like in such a short amount of time is very, very impressive. Like, and anybody who gets to have a Bitcoin job, like that is that is just amazing.
I'm amazed. Yeah, I was prepared to pay from my Bitcoin savings 1.5 years my own salary, and I never had to touch Bitcoin, which completely surprised me, because I just pushed every day like 70 hours per week and tried to do my best to get that started with some failed project in the starting, but it somehow got to be. And yeah, I will talk a little bit more about that in the year end review. Really looking forward to that. Perfect. Yeah. But one thing that I'm really interesting also, news in general, because we have now Twitter, we run now coming to Nostr, even though a small amount of people actually use it, even in the Bitcoin community, only a small amount of people actually use it. Are we now moving kind of to that primary source, individual journalism phase where we don't have the newspaper anymore, and we kind of follow the individuals that we like best? Or let's say, I think in the presidential election was also interesting, where Donald Trump chose to be on extremely a lot of podcasts, versus this was not the case before in other elections too much. Where I think the most interesting comment on under the Joe Rogan Donald Trump interview was like, that's the official moment where a podcast got more power than the mainstream media with Joe Rogan. How do you see the shift to X, YouTube podcasting versus the mainstream media, or is that changing anything?
Yeah, I mean, to play devil's advocate, like we can also move in a idiocracy kind of future, like theoretically, like not just because you have a microphone and an audience does not give you like you don't have to be right. Like you can spoof some, like the legacy media as we know it is dead. Like this entire model is broken. But like with Noster, there might be a way where people can do these micropayments. Like this is the thing that like the traditional like big newspapers never really understood. Like they always wanted to sell you like a subscription for like several weeks, and like this barrier to entry, you have to decide, or do I pay $50 or you pay $10, or like even if it's like, I don't know, €2 per article, like this was too much for some people. And like with Nostr, where you can have like really tiny micropayments, and these amount to a lot of money. Like I see like people posting long form content on there, or like Stacker News, and they get paid for it. I don't know if it's like enough to live on that, but if more people do this, and like micropayments actually work with Bitcoin, as opposed to like this very famous Nick Szabo paper that said, oh, micropayments will never work. I think they work, and they are a very big like piece of the puzzle to get better information, I think. Then again, you should not also only listen to people that you like to have a fully formed opinion. Like in Germany, we have like the Taz, like the most left-leaning newspaper there is, and then like on the what is on the right side, like Cicero, Eigentümlich Frei, like there's some other publications. And I think like conservative people should read this one, and the lefties should read this and like challenge their ideas. And you should also tip people or like pay for stuff that people put out that might be an inconvenient truth, that is like something that's is not aligning with your worldview, but is still holding truth. And with Bitcoin, I think there is like a way to have a better information in that regard. And it will be, podcasters definitely have a much larger, more important audience. Donald Trump understood that. And I'm here for it.
Yeah, it's interesting, the echo chamber of social media. That's true, because with the things you interact most,
absolutely an echo chamber. Absolutely. But let me say one thing about Nostr. Nostr does not have to be a social media clone. Like I use Nostr to cross post all my memes that I make. Like I enjoy it, and then I see, oh, this meme made 4 or 5 euros on Nostr and made 0 on Instagram and Twitter. Like this is great. But Nostr essentially is also a liberating medium where we do not rely on DNS, like DNS servers that are a centralizing thing. With Nostr, we can not just have private messages, but we can exchange information, or we can be, it's similar to DNS. You can have servers that respond to this Nostr Wallet Connect, all these things. Like there's a Bitcoin multi-sig wallet called Bitcoin Safe. It is written by a guy from Germany, a former Spectre desktop developer. And he just very briefly implemented an amazing feature based on Nostr, that you can, when you set up your multi-sig wallet, you can store the output descriptor and synchronize that across Nostr. And when you do a co-signing event where you have to have like a transaction signed by 2 or 3 people, instead of like copying the PSBT or like text messaging or sending files on like a sneakernet, you can do this over an encryptor, I think NIP17 Nostr DM within this wallet. And this is just like, blows my mind. Like that is so, and he said it was really, really easily implemented. And you can treat Noster identities like these NSECs as single use. You don't have to have to tie to an idea. Like you can use them once and then you never use them again. And you can synchronize your labels of your UTXO over Noster. So, and that is I don't know. There's so many things built on Noster that we have not even scratched the surface, and it does not have to be exclusively like a social media clone.
Is it maybe more broadly just an new information protocol?
Yeah, I mean, it is an information protocol. Like, it is a digital ID, like just having a private and a public key and what you want to do with it. Like, it is nodes and other stuff transmitted by relays. Like, you only need a certain number of relays to reach the boundary of this network. Like, it is I don't think the ultimate solution is to be hosting videos and image files, something like this. This is great if it's more centralized, but to have the option to have controversial content or something published across a network like this is great, and then everybody can choose their window of censorship. Like, you are much more free, and censorship can be something just an algorithm that only feeds you certain things that make you happy or angry or whatever, which definitely happens on Meta or Twitter, on all these other platforms. And with these kind of things, you have your identity, you can take it anywhere, and you can choose what kind of content you want to see.
Absolutely, and that's where we get freedom, because freedom comes from optionality and having the option of having Nostr, having Twitter, having LinkedIn. It's kind of like a spectrum of LinkedIn, then Facebook, Instagram comes in there, then it's Twitter a little bit more free, then we have Nostr on the other side. So it's good to have the option to be on the platform you really want. And yeah, definitely Nostr has really interesting applications. There's a guy in El Salvador who even connects it to the medical system there and works with hospitals. So the people own their own data on Nostra and can choose to give it to the hospitals and the doctors they want to. Really interested also in how this pans out.
That is brilliant. I mean, yeah, I mean, life is your oyster. Like, you can, now is the time to build. Like, if there are young listeners that are thinking about what kind of future career, build on Bitcoin, build on Nostr, and you will not be hungry. Like, there for every line of code you can write for Nostr, I think somebody will pay you 1 Satoshi, at least.
Let's make the first seed round with 2 Satoshis. Which is also interesting, because you just told me before that you have Seedor, the company, and you just had said me that there's no more Seedors available, so you're basically completely booked with your not devices, how are they called?
Steel wallets, these kind of things, everything that is behind me there is already spoken for. That is true alpha. I could foresee this price pump weeks ahead. The same thing happened last year around October, November, and then in March we had the all-time high. I see steel wallet sales rising, and that is so bullish. And then I talked to my friends in the hardware signing business, and they just agree, yeah, this has been the best month ever. And that is just a sign what's about to come, because when people are willing to pay for a premium product like this and are interested in self-custody, they are talking about taking Bitcoin from exchanges. And the more, and you see this rate is declining. There's I think 2 million Bitcoin left, and it's ever steadily declining. The sooner this goes to zero, it won't ever go to zero, but it will become much more apparent what the actual true price of Bitcoin is, because when Michael Saylor buys Bitcoin for $40 billion and the price does not move, some shady stuff going on.
So Seedor is kind of steel wallets are kind of a sign of where to go. Do you see that being an indicator of future price movements?
Again, I used to trade, I used to trade all these different shit and altcoins. And would have given a lot for this kind of alpha, or for this kind of market sentiment. This is a beautiful barometer. There's this I think McDonald's thing, like depending on how many McDonald's places are in a country, that is an indicator of how free they are, because like North Korea has a very limited number of McDonald's than the United States. And I think like steel wallets, like the most primitive, let's call it dumbest technology, like hitting a hammer and embossing like private seeds, private keys, that is basic. Like there are people that have Bitcoin, there are people that have it in self-custody, they have people that have it on a hardware signing device, there are people that have their backup on paper, they have it on something from the hardware store. There's like so many different other companies, and I can only see what's happening in our store. And like just like Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, like thousands of devices go over the counter, and you just think like, I was not ready for this. Like this is the third time that I experienced this before like Christmas. And every time I think, oh, next year you will be ready and will be better prepared and you do better supply chain management and you will be more in stock. And then same again, but the numbers are bigger.
Interesting. I love how integrated McDonald's is in indexes and numbers, like the Big Mac index, and there are like a bunch of other things with McDonald's.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very strong brand, but I think Bitcoin is a bigger brand than the Golden Arches now.
Absolutely, yeah. McDonald's just like, it was my first ever investment in stocks, so it has some sentiment to me.
Okay, I don't even know what my first stock was. I think it was like ThyssenKrupp. It was actually like a steel stock, which is kind of ironic retrospectively.
Nice. Yeah, I don't even like McDonald's, so but back then I liked it, and when my stockbroker finally opened, I got the message when I was sitting at a McDonald's. So I was like, hey, I have now 500 euros in there. Let's just invest in McDonald's. What can go wrong? So that was my basic decision tree of buying McDonald's at like 18 years old.
Well, we got to start somewhere. But yeah, that's also beautiful about Bitcoin. Like you can trade it 24/7. No downtime.
Absolutely, really cool. Yeah, perfect. Then thank you so much already. We have one question at the end of the podcast. It's always the same question for each guest. I think the first time we did it, we didn't have that routine. I'm not sure. But the
first time we did
is,
it, like the previous guest asked me a question and I had to ask the next guest something, I think.
Yeah, yes, we still have that. But before, there's one question before that I now ask all the time is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin to get something outside of Bitcoin also in the podcast?
So I think the only truly special topic that I'm very well versed and actually teach people about, might come as a surprise to you, is not Bitcoin, but mycology. Like I'm very, very like deep into mushrooms, and I'm not talking about like psychedelic mushrooms or anything that, you know, like gets you high, but like the, we call them Kochtopfmykologie, like the ones that are culinary in use. So I can go during the seasons that we have here in Europe into the forest with you, and I can show you what you can eat and what you can't. And I can tell you the names of those mushrooms in like German, English, French, and Latin. that is one of those not useless skills, but yeah, might come in handy depending on, you know, how things go. I will survive during the mushroom seasons in the woods.
That's great. My grandma also has that skill, and I loved it because she always went in the woods and brought those really good things back, and it was a delicious lunch always.
It is really perfect, I think, Bitcoiner pastime, like foraging for mushrooms. It is like it slows you down. It is very thrifty and frugal. They are healthy, like it's a good source of protein, and there's good stuff in there. And yeah, you're self-sufficient, you're sovereign. You can actually like live off that. So I think more people should, you know, get into foraging.
Absolutely. But now the end routine that you know about, where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest is and this is kind of a very fitting one. What's your, because you're the quiz master, what's your favorite hardware wallet and why? And maybe we can spice that question a little bit up for you. What are your three favorite hardware wallets? And maybe you can put those three things for different types of people, for beginners, like people that just come in, for maybe people that have a little bit more money in there, people that are more advanced, things like that.
Okay, I'm wearing the shirt right now. What does it tell you? Can you recognize it?
Oh, I don't recognize it. No, what is that?
Okay, I have to check. So my all-time favorite hardware signer, it is a very obscure one, probably to most people, is this one. This is the Spectre DIY Shield Edition, and it is. I'm an old person. I like to touch. Has a big screen. You can do anything. Like it is state of the art. Like you can do tap script, multi-signature. You can do all of these things, and you can easily restore different seeds because the Shield Edition has something called smart cards. I can put a Java card in here, and that is a removable secure element, and I can have different kind of seeds on different Java cards, and it is absolutely wonderful, and I absolutely love it. Not a lot of people know about it. It is kind of pricey, even if you build it yourself. But there are places where you can get it pre-built or you can build it yourself from off-the-shelf components, and it's really a secure device. Then the BitBox, it's just a great hardware signer all around. It's beautifully designed. It is very intuitive. It is the one that I probably recommended to most people, and I've sold hundreds of them. And also really like all of the features that you would need in a modern hardware signing device, it already has that. And of course they have the insurance integrated, but I was a fan long before they did that. And yeah, and in third place, yeah, I would have to say like Trezor Safe 5 right now is a really, really great hardware signing device. Like they have a Bitcoin only edition now. That is important to me. Like I don't want to have like this large attack surface with like all these different like codes that they have to maintain for like supporting other currencies. I fully understand why BitBox and Trezor they do this because they run a company. They have like mouths to feed, and like Bitcoin only up until very recently was not that profitable. I would assume that's why they support all these different kind of coins. But the Trezor Safe 5 has a secure element, has a good screen, has a very good like software accompanying to it, and it's fully open source. So, and yeah, I do the German translation of the Trezor suite. So.
Yeah, really cool. Thank you so much, Chris, for your time. It was really cool with you. It's always fun chatting with you. Thank you so much for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, read more about you, maybe also get the insurance?
Yeah, if you follow the link, we have it below. If you want to look what kind of insurance policies we offer, you can send me an email, chris@bitsurance.eu or chris@z.io. Or the easiest is if you just follow me on X or Twitter @Coinjoined. I follow all the plebs back, and I'm always happy to talk about Bitcoin. And yeah, tomorrow I will drive to Switzerland, Bitcoin Baden. Next week, I'm not sure when this will drop. Will this drop before the 13th of December?
Could be around that time, actually.
Because on the 13th of December, I will fly to Austria, to Graz, and with Coinfinity, I will do a special Who Wants to Be a Satoshi Millionaire quiz show, and it will be live, and people can participate. Nico Yilch will be the contestant, and I will ask him 21 Bitcoin questions, and everybody at home can play along live as well, and there will be a ton of prizes. And yeah, this is the 13th, Friday the 13th, and 8 o'clock in the evening, Central European time.
Really cool. Yeah. And have hard questions for Nico. He needs them.
I told him, like, I will ask him Nico questions. Like, we did this before with Mark Friedrich, and he really, really surprised me. Like, he got 18, I think, from 21 questions correct, even though they were very hard questions towards the end. But he will have a phone joker, he will have an audience joker, and it won't be, I will not make it easy for him, not like the celebrity who wants to be a millionaire. No, this is going to be an educational also fun quiz, and we will test Nico's knowledge. And I hope people turn in, and hopefully this episode drops before that, so people don't know what they missed.
Perfect. And I will make sure that it drops before that. If it's not the normal schedule, I will just move it up a little bit.
Thank you.
As I'm the sole of that podcast, I can make that.
That is
decision.
very centralized.
It's a very centralized, but I don't know if you can call it open sourced, because I gave away, and I said that in multiple podcasts, and I made it also the switch on the YouTube license. Everyone can use whatever video they want to cut out of here, for whatever reason they want to use it. And they can just take it. I don't take ownership of my podcast in that way, because I think, if someone owns the video, it should be my guest and not me, because the guest is usually speaking, and the guest is usually the one that gives most insights. And therefore, like, if you want to clip my podcast, if you want to take something, if you want to just copy it and upload it somewhere else, like, go ahead, do it. It's free marketing for me anyways.
We have nothing to hide, and but I don't think like many people will pay for video of me, but
Chris, how's that OnlyFans account?
Yeah, I had one, and people paid me to put my clothes back on. Like they just didn't want to see them anymore. It was very lucrative for a brief second there.
Really, really cool. Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris, for being on. Also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.